Yeah, as Sarah introduced, I am Sam Cho. I currently over at GoodRx. I'm the director of our CX technology and tech programs. If you are not aware of what GoodRx is, really in short, we provide healthcare for those individuals who have medications and prescribed medications. And when you go to like CVS, Kroger, Safeway, Walgreens, and so forth, you pay the retail price, and GoodRx offers a coupon discount, usually about 80 to 90% off. So just a little spiel of GoodRx in case you weren't aware. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Um, Let me stop that. Excuse me. Let me try that again. Are you guys able to see my screen here? Yes, no, maybe. Can't.
No, I don't see your screen,
No,
Sam.
okay. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Let me try this. Uh, Apologize for this. Sorry. This should work now. Yep. Okay, cool. So let me go to slideshow mode here. Cool. Um, So just a little bit, the agenda here is I'm going to do a little bit intro about me, spend a little bit of time on that, do go into the research and preparation, applying the jobs, and then going through interviewing tips, so best practices for salary negotiations, and then doing a live Q&A. And so, just real quickly, this Q&A piece, it's really the AMA is Ask Me Anything. And it's to enhance and to encourage you all to ask me anything in terms of tech, the job market, the interviewing tips, salary negotiations, job apps, anything pertaining in those scope of areas. I'm not here to sway you into technology SaaS companies if that's not what what your heart's desire is. I will leave that to folks like Sarah and the rest of the career advisors of their job to help you navigate. So, and at the end here, I'm also going to throw a Google form for those who actually want to ask me any burning questions that you may not have time to ask here. If we run out of time, and if you want to meet up for like coffee chat or Zoom or phone call of guidances, that's what the Google form is for. So, with that said, so just a little bit about me at the very high level. I have 15 plus years of experience in technology and SaaS space. If you don't know what SaaS is pretty much it's software as a service. And I helped deploy and led over 25 integrations from engineering to data to customer facing initiatives and projects. In the span of 15 years, I helped hired over 100 people in all functions, where people have directly reported to me and or there's these 100 groups of people are other folks who are on the leadership team and cross-functional folks as well. I've helped build out PMO process, so project management office. It's also known as program management office at these companies. And then with all the projects and programs I've helped led and was part of, at the grand scheme of things, these programs generated over $100 million of revenue to date. And these are several of the companies I used to work at, and then currently I'm over at GoodRx. I wish that $100 million was going to my pocket, but it doesn't work that way. So, all right, let's move on to research and preparation to applying the jobs here. So, I will caveat that I am not going to spend of how to apply the jobs. I think that's pretty standard practice, nor am I here to kind of give you the guidance of how you should exactly apply to jobs. All of the tips and the tricks and kind of the inside pieces that I'm sharing my knowledge here with you all is things that helped me as a candidate to previous companies. and hopefully it will help you guys as well. And especially with the job market today, I want to encourage you all. I know things have been shaky, are shaky. People are being laid off left and right, unfortunately. But I want to encourage you all to not be afraid of continuing to apply time after time. So with that said, here's the thing with the broken mindset of applying to jobs today. Just going to show a little illustration here. So let's just take the top three websites that we all know across the board all over the internet. It's LinkedIn, Indeed, and ZipRecruiter. So if you don't know what these three websites all in all, they aggregate your resume, your background history of where you studied, and or if you have work experience, and they aggregate all this information and post it out onto your profile so that when you apply to jobs, you can get matched and so forth. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. There's a lot of great information online for this piece. And so usually the broken mindset is you go to any of these three websites, as example, you hopefully go through interviews, right? And then you go to the round of job offers, which would then go into this happy life moment, right? And I think a lot of people here think that, going through interviews to job offers and then whatever job that you land, whether it's a big four tech company like Google, Tesla, Amazon, so forth, will equal to a happy life. And I'm here to debunk all of that information and to let you know that that's actually not the case. And I'll share a little bit of reason of why as you may want to kind of understand. So, when you go through the mindset of applying to jobs, everyone has this mindset of once you land a job, you're going to make money. And sure, that may be the case, and that may also not be the case. And then the next stage is, you can use this money however you would like, right? Because it's yours. And then, you get to brag and share the excitement with your friends and family and other peers of in the industry of where you're at. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think where it comes to the broken mindset is landing a job equals a happy life, which means I can do whatever I want. And usually the case, what happens of trends is that when you go into that mindset of just applying to jobs and thinking that it'll give you a happy life, there's a broken piece to it because you're not actually trying to do your job well. You just have a job, and folks are kind of circulating this 360 viewpoint of I have a job, clock in, clock out, make money, pay rent, go out, eat, enjoy, vacation, nothing wrong with that. And same thing happens over and over. And I want to encourage you all that, the job that where you land is a foundation and a mechanism so that you can build to a happy life, right? And happy life, it will be different for all sorts of people. Your life circumstance, your background, um, your personal matters are coming into play here. So I just want to caveat that when you go into this broken mindset of applying jobs, it's not going to be such a happy life reward type of way immediately. So let's just take the LinkedIn, for example, if we were applying to jobs today. So I came up with this two methodologies. I'll call it SNAR methodology. And you may be asking, what does that really mean? So here the acronym of it, it's that usually folks search for new roles once or three times a day. Um, these folks also have really no connection to the recruiter, to the hiring manager. They may not be aware of their friends or family who may be working at these places. The A stands for applying to the role with zero confidence. Remember, in my previous slide is that broken mindset. And the applying mechanism to zero confidence is such a vital key piece. because when you apply to jobs, you don't want to just go in thinking with your head down, thinking, oh, there's a million other people applying to jobs, so why should they choose me? That should never be the case. And the R is really the repeat. So it's almost this four-level cycle of the STAR methodology where people are searching not really a lot of times throughout the day. They don't make connections online. They apply with zero confidence, and then the it's repeated. Um, so with that, the SNAR, I then created a SCAR methodology. And so what you want to do in LinkedIn is you want to search for these new roles every hour. May seem like a daunting task. I can already probably feel your head spinning or your mind, your heart is racing about this task. Um, the C stands for connecting and sending a note to the hiring manager. Well, how do I connect and see who the hiring manager is? So, just to give you a little tidbit, when you look at these roles on LinkedIn as example, because this is the example that I'm using today, is that most of the times the role, the JD, the job description, it'll say who you would be potentially reporting to. So it sounds stalkerish, and I promise you, it's totally okay to do this of copy and pasting of who you would be potentially reporting to. So it may be this engineer, you're going to be reporting to the director of engineering. Okay, great. What you're going to do for um, let's just say there was a startup called Stealth, just throwing a name out there. Okay, you're on that job page on LinkedIn. You go to Stealth Company, then you go to People, then you look up, copy and paste the director of engineering. And usually that person, that he or she will come up on that page. And this is your opportunity to connect with them and send a note. And I'll condense it into three small points here is you just want to quickly introduce yourself briefly. Say, hello, my name is Sam. I saw that you're posting for a rec for engineering, and I'm very much interested. And then the second piece is why are you interested in that role? I'm currently at USC studying computer science, as an example. I've interned at XYZ company, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you and learning more about the role. And you want to close it by asking to connect. So you're almost leaving the ball in their court, and almost in a way, you're changing the methodology of how you are conversing and want to converse with them into the future. The third piece is applying to the role with confidence. Remember, what I said here in the SNAR methodology is a lot of people tend to apply to roles with zero confidence. And applying to the role with confidence, what I tend to do, it sounds kind of cheesy. It's different for all sorts of people. Sometimes you want to look yourself in the mirror, and it sounds really weird, but you want to tell yourself that you can do it or you got it. Or maybe you have a significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, or family member that can kind of walk you through emotionally or mentally to help you alongside of applying. Maybe you feel really discouraged. Maybe you really don't feel that you may get the role, but you want to reach out to those people who are next to you and help you and have that support. It's very important to have that. Then, lastly, you want to repeat that. So, I share this because this is the framework that has worked for me. And believe it or not, previously coming to GoodRx, I was at One Medical, which were acquired by Amazon. At that time of search, I was applying every hour. Usually throughout the day, I would close about 50 to 70 applications a day. It's a lot. And I understand of how much work and time commitment that goes in. But if you think about it, if you statistically, if you are not applying to these jobs, someone else is, and someone else will have that opportunity at your seat. And so all of this to say, search for new roles every hour, connect and send a note to the hiring manager or to the recruiter, introducing yourself, why you're interested into the role, excuse me, applying to the role with confidence, and you want to repeat. Awesome. So, interviewing best practices and salary negotiation tips. Um, Here is the IWC mindset. And what the IWC mindset really encompasses is owning your craft. And you want to conduct your own research on the following, and which is the company, the job description, financial statements if they're a public company, and team members who you'll be potentially meeting with. So let me just pause here. Usually, when you're going through the interview rounds, the recruiter will tell you, that person will tell you who you're about to meet next. And you, especially if you're going through the final rounds, they'll usually tell you, oh, you're going to meet with this person and their title. They'll never give you their email address just to protect their identity and sensitive information. And what you want to do is you want to look them up on LinkedIn, see their past history of where they used to work and what they're doing today, and try to get a sense of why this person, this individual, is part of the interview panel. This is very important because when you're conducting your own research, and the team, we will know whether you've done your research. For example, we may ask you, what what do you know about our company? And what do you know about our subscription model, as example? And you may either know the answer or may not know the answer. So it's very important for you to do your research into the company, into the job description, any open financial statements, which is public knowledge and information if they're a public company. If they're a private company where they don't have open stocks on the stock market, that's okay. You can still read blogs and news posts about that company. And then team members who you'll be meeting with. Um, the three Ps. So you want to make sure that you practice over and over and over again. I cannot stress this enough. Um, Two tidbits. It's really, you want to record yourself. And second piece is practice with your friends and family members. If you record yourself, you're actually going to catch yourself either cringing or laughing at yourself, which happens to me all the time. I say to myself a bunch of silly things when I record myself. But then what you want to do is, as you're recording yourself, take notes of yourself. And you're going to be catching yourself of saying all the ums, buts, and us. And those are things you actually don't want to communicate within your interview. You actually want to take your time, pausing, and then moving on to the statement by answering confidently. So you want to make sure that you record yourself. Take as much time as you need to record yourself. Do it multiple times and practice. Second thing is practicing with your friends and family members. Maybe you're not comfortable recording yourself. Okay, that's not an issue. Maybe you could do it in front of a couple of your friends or family members. And this is very important because they can give you real-time feedback. Sure, they may not be the hiring manager nor the recruiter, but they can give you some sort of moral support right there in front of you. And they may give you some guidance of, hey, I felt you were a little rushed while you were explaining about the company. Or maybe they may give you some feedback regarding about your us, ums, but, and, or ifs. So three P's is practice, practice, practice. OID. So what that really means is owning your domain. This is a pretty well-known term throughout the technology space of owning your domain. And what does really owning your domain really mean? So here are several questions that you want to ask yourself is, what am I good at? What makes me unique from others? How can I be an asset to the team? Am I a team player? And do I like being told what to do versus asking what I can do more? So let me give you a plain example of owning your domain. So let's just say, Sam, that's me. I'm a USC student and I'm applying for a role in the engineering for Google. Google is a massive company. They have multiple products. So let's just say I am applying for Google Cloud. Okay, we know what product we're going to aim for, but within Google Cloud, there's multiple entities within that. There's data, there's the Google Cloud of your Google Drive, right? There's the applications that we use today, the Google Suite that we all know and are familiar with. There's also the Google Cloud of different backend databases of integrations. And these are just 4 or 5 I just named out of, I believe they have over 120 right now. um, and so, what is your OID? And your OID can be, I'm very specific on, I'm very good at owning the Google Cloud spectrum of data. So I understand the data quality sets. I know SQL pretty well. I know how to run Postman between the backend systems very well. I've looked at API integrations. I've looked at and tested it myself. So using that example, that is my domain of expertise. That is where I will hone in on my skill set. And usually, this is very important because it ties into your job offer. Because when the recruiter is about to offer you to the offer letter stage of getting that job, they will ask you several questions of how did you feel about the company and meeting the team? What did you learn about the interviews? And this is important. It's almost like a double-sided trick question, but they're asking you specifically because they want to see if, number one, you understand the company, number two, the job description, number three, if you felt comfortable with meeting with the teams, but number four is your OID of owning your domain. Now, I will caveat not everyone has a very specific narrow lane of OID of owning your domain, but you want to grow into this. My lane currently today is technology and business systems. You may be asking yourself, what in the world is that? So these are all SaaS third-party applications, whether you know them or not, that I oversee and run. I know them very well because this is my OID. This is where I spent multiple years of experience on the job. And what I want to encourage you, students or alumni, if you're here, is hone in on your OID. Ask yourself these questions over and over. Maybe you want to ask yourself, twice a year, or maybe 4 times a year per quarter. What am I good at? What makes me unique from others? How can I be an asset to the team? Am I a team player? Do I like being told what to do versus asking what can I do more? These are questions, again, I want to help train you all to get into this owning your craft of mindset. And lastly, don't be good at one thing, be versatile. Just because you are very good at these data set qualities, like that engineer of Google Cloud I use myself as example for, that doesn't mean I stop and learn. No, technology is always revamping. AI is on the forefront of in front of our faces today. And thirdly, you never want to stay stagnant in your job or also within your personal knowledge because once you feel you hone in on one thing, you move on to the next and you get a sense of a greater skill set and knowledge. All right. So moving on to salary negotiations here. So KYW stands for Know Your Worth. This is all part of your relevant experience. This is part of your technical, analytical, and operational problem solving skill set, and also market data. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time of what websites to go because you can actually Google a lot of these websites that will tell you the market data. One of them is levels.fyi. It's a very pretty robust market level data of what your salary range will be. But the first 2 points is pretty relevant today of your experience, whether you had 0 years, 4 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, but also, the technical, analytical, and operational problem sets, solving skill sets. So the nose of salary negotiations. Here's a number one reason why you don't get the salary that you are hoping to get. When you first apply, you then jump on a call with the recruiter. Pretty standard practice, nothing wrong. That person may ask you, well, Sam, what type of salary range are you looking for the pay? And right there and then, 90% what I've seen people do is they give them a number. And this is something you don't want to do. And I'll tell you several reasons why. Usually within a job, I've spent some time in HR of working on these platforms and teams, and as a hiring manager, as an assistant hiring manager, as someone who was part of a cross-functional organization to interview these folks. Usually, the job, there's a salary band. It can, hypothetically, if I was a software engineer for Google, it really depends on your level of expertise, how well you did on the interviews, how much you actually know about your skill set that you are interviewing for, and lastly, what your expectations are. So, taking that same example, Google Cloud Engineering, usually that ranges for a new grad, that probably ranges anywhere between 120 to 200K a year, which is pretty good in my opinion. What happens well on that phone call? Oh, I'm looking for $95,000. Okay, the recruiter will say, "Great, we're aligned." And that salary band is actually, you're missing that chunk of $110,000, which should go into your pocket, but actually stays in the employee's pocket. So the first and the most important rule of a no is to never give your salary expectations over the phone. Okay, well, Sam, let's just say this person's pressuring me. Let's say that they are really drilling me what I really want. And usually recruiters will do this and they'll ask you, I would like to kind of understand where you're at because if we do move on further, let's just say we need to save each other's time. Very valid point. Just say you don't feel comfortable at the moment and say that you're willing to be open to meeting with the hiring manager and the team to get a sense of what the environment and what the job will be like. And then you pause for about 5 seconds and tell the recruiter that you'd be happy and more to dive in deeper after meeting with the team. So what that does, it gives confidence to the recruiter. Oh, well, actually, this person, okay, I respect that. Let them move on to the next round if that is the path. Second no is don't expect negotiating until after the on-site interview has been conducted. What you never want to do is after going through each interview round, you never want to negotiate your salary ever, period, whether that's over the phone, through LinkedIn, or through email. Lastly, is don't reach out to the hiring manager demanding more money. I've seen this a couple times and it actually turns out really bad for the job seeker, the interviewer. And unfortunately, that's not how things work. So please don't do that. The dues is pretty standard practice here. If you want to start negotiating your salary after the on-site with a number in mind, You want to be confident and know exactly what number you have in mind. You want to make sure you ask for a sign-on bonus. So um, I'll get to that later. If relocation is required, ask upfront about the cost of moving. If that's something the company can help sponsor you, usually they do. And lastly, you want to research and be ready to give an explanation as to why giving you the salary bump would be beneficial to the team and the company. So let me wrap it up this way. I recently had a friend who just signed on with Riot Games. Before he signed, I was coaching him and walking him through of how to negotiate his offer letter. So his offer letter came in. I'm not going to tell you what that exact amount was, but I'll give you just a broad range. And that range, for this example, it's not going to be a real range. Let's just say it was 100K to 150. Just throwing that out there. They met in the middle. Um, Again, this is not his real range, but just for the sake of this. So they met in the middle. Let's just say 120, 125K. Okay, not bad. And the reason why he knew the band was because by law, California law, the companies now have to post what the actual band is. Number two, if you ask the recruiter, by law, they are required for them to tell you over email and or over the phone or Zoom if that happens. So with that said, I told my friend, don't sign until we start the negotiation phase. So he got the offer for 125. Obviously, there was some negotiations back and forth. I coached him through that, hey, we need to ask for a little bit more and then a sign-on bonus. But I told him specifically, don't ask for the sign-on bonus in to redact as if what you could have gotten. So, for example, if my friend went with 125K, that 25K extra could potentially go to the sign-on bonus, right? Which usually happens. But because we want to be very tactful and skillful in this negotiation phase, I told him, go back to the recruiter, ask for 140, and tell the recruiter why. And tell them 3 points. Number one, after you have met the team and the hiring manager, you feel very confident, you're excited for the company and the role to join, and that you will sign ASAP. Number two, what you want to also encourage the recruiter, after hearing about the role, I actually found myself that I can contribute to the company's success by XYZ. XYZ could be all sorts of things of your skill set, what you learned about the role after speaking with the hiring manager, the team itself, right? Thirdly, to sell yourself is you want to then talk about the future. I really see myself growing here at Riot Games as example. And I see myself being here 3, 4 plus years. I love what Riot Games is all about, creating games, fostering an online community for gamers. I love the technology of what you guys are working towards to next, right? And so he got, not only did he get the 140K, but then came on tackling on a sign-on bonus. So theoretically, the math would say, okay, we went from 125K to 140. In the band, we have that 10K left. What do we do with that? You don't want to ask for just a 10K sign-on bonus. Some people may care, some people may not. I said, go to the recruiter, ask for a 20K sign-on bonus. You may be thinking to yourself, hold on, Sam, you're asking above the band salary budget. By law, your salary and the sign-on bonus are two different things. So I just want to make that very clear. Usually, most companies, they'll tie it in together to kind of package it everything, but they are two separate. So not only did we go from 125K and no sign-on bonus, but we went to 140K plus additional 20K sign-on bonus. So that's 160K as an example. So which is great. That is about about 40, 35 to 40K more than what he could have gotten. So those are some of the tactics that you want to do when it comes to salary negotiations. It's very important to sell yourself. It's very important to have yourself be confident of why you are asking for more. And what I would share with you all is don't be discouraged if you hit the actual ceiling of your band. Don't be discouraged if they come back and say, sorry, we can't meet those demands. It's not the end of the world. So just encourage you all. All right, how are we doing for time? Okay, so in this deck, I'm going to, there's a Google form here link that I'll put in the chat here. Um, and what this form will do is ask questions that you can send to right up to me. And if you want to follow up with me further through a Zoom, phone call, coffee chat in person, um, happy to do that and be a resource. And with that said, I want to thank you all for your time, and we'll open up for any questions or comments. Stop sharing screen here.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam, for all of that information. He covered a lot from job search process, interviewing to salary negotiation. So I do see a few Q&A questions and also some in the chat. So I'll go from the order that they were submitted. And also note that if you have something you want to verbalize, you can raise your hand and then we'll call on you and you can also unmute yourself. All right, so the first question is on interviewing. So Sam, can you provide us with some examples of technical interviewing questions?
Sure. Some of them, right off the bat, is number one is what is your coding skill set and what languages are you most comfortable with? That's number one. Number two would be how comfortable are you of doing data set qualities and checks and balances between the deployment and pre-deployment of the code? And the third piece that comes to mind is from a technical perspective, is if we had an API call from one database to another, what is the actual script and in order to find what the error is showing up as? And usually the script to kind of drill it in a little bit more, it's usually a Python script. Technically, it could be any coding script that you create or that you have resources to, but that's how it's usually done.
Awesome, thanks, Sam. We have another interview question. So do you have any advice, interview advice for someone who is applying for an internship versus a full-time role?
Yeah, I do. So internship, it varies because a lot of companies they do offer internship, and usually it's non-paid because by law, technically you can't hire someone with an intern of being paid in tax law regulations. But usually the best way, couple things is number one is you want to go on LinkedIn, and if you just type in search of internships and then drill it down by California as example, or whatever state that you're actually in, you can actually see a whole list of jobs of these companies are offering internships at. And then from there, you want to go ahead and use the tactics that I've used of a SCAR methodology of reaching out to these hiring managers. Try to reach out to the recruiter. Usually on LinkedIn, sometimes you'll see who the hiring team is. If you don't, there's still ways that you can do it by looking at, if it's a recruiter, if it's an engineering internship, just search for that recruiter, comma engineering or technical recruiter. And usually that'll kind of get your foot a little bit in the door in order to send a note to these recruiters or hiring managers.
Great, thanks, Sam. And last question about interviews. Do you have any advice on the different types of interviews in the tech space?
Um, it's a little broad question. My answer to that is I would kind of want whoever asked that, if you can kind of clarify, just only because there's so many different avenues that we can go from different types of interviews because we have from engineering roles, right? We have the coding exercises. From a technical program management, we have case studies. From a operational project program management or IT on a day-to-day basis, there's different other case studies that may be technically more advanced or less advanced depending on what that role is. So, great question, but whoever asked that, if you can kind of clarify, I'll be more than happy to try to jump in there.
Yeah, feel free to type that question again. It was asked anonymously, so whoever it was, feel free to do that. But I think you answered it well. I think they were just curious about the different types of interviews offered. All right, so there's a lot more in the Q&A, and I also do
Yeah,
see a hand raised. So we will get to you after we go through some of the Q&A questions because I believe that these were posted first. So the first question, again, just looking at the Q&A section is, how can we as an applicant stand out in the process? There seems to be a trade-off in applying early or applying with referrals / cover letters. Any other tips that students might not be aware of?
yeah, great question. Referral is your best way to get your foot in the door at any company. Um, First and foremost, plain and simple. In terms of the breaking into tech, your other ways, tactics that I shared from a SCAR methodology, that's another way. For example, when I joined GoodRx, I didn't know anyone. I just reached out to my boss, the hiring manager at that time. We connected through LinkedIn and sent him my resume. Um, and then he wanted to jump on a phone call. And then while that was happening, I reached out to the recruiter because he gave me who the recruiter was. And so I then messaged the recruiter and got connected. So, your best bet to get your foot in the door to be noticed quickly and assertively is by referral.
Yep, try to connect with as many people as possible. The next question is how to break into tech roles from a non-tech background, especially with respect to clearing technical rounds. How to showcase technical skills.
Great question. I feel that's like the burning question I get all the time from friends and family. So, if you are going from a tech to non-tech role, or vice versa, non-tech to a technical role, there are a bunch of resources today that you can sign up for. You can sign up through the LinkedIn courses. There's a Google courses, right, that are free. You can also courses on Udemy.com as example, or Coursera. There's also a bunch of other Discord channels out there that you can join of a community of project managers, program managers, product managers. There's also engineering Discord channels that you can join. Um, to be honest, all the resources are actually out there on the web, and you can quickly move to that place. What I will say, what I've seen going from a technical to a non-technical role, the best way is to understand and navigate which type of organization that you're trying to go with, because we have the usually the tech org, which comprises of engineers and product managers. And then outside of that, you have the operational, which is more marketing, sales. You have CX, which is customer support. And then you have BD, which is business development, and CSM, which is customer success managers. So these are more forefront facing with customers and or sales marketing, customer support. Once you kind of know and understand which organization you want to head towards to from a technical to a non-technical, then what you want to do is look at the resources online and see what it actually it's all about. So if you know you want to go from engineering background to program management, which still could be technical, there's also non-technical program management roles. It's more focused on operational side, strategic, being a strategic mindset leader. There's tons of resources there, so hope that helps.
Great advice. So the next question is actually the same individual who raised their hand. So if you want to
Okay.
unmute yourself, please feel free to. Would you like to verbalize your question? Okay, no worries. If not, I'm just going to read off what you've written here. So, can you touch more on the current job market for software engineers? Roughly how many positions are open now compared to previously when the economy was quote unquote normal, based on your experience in your company? And how should we secure a software engineer position in this environment?
Yeah, great question. This topic alone, I could spend over an hour going into it. I'll keep it short and plain and simple. Where the job market is today with software engineers has actually been growing pretty steadily and uh, fast. Especially with AI coming into picture nowadays. We as in the tech space, we're trying to evolve quickly, um, and be more adaptive to change when it comes to AI and chatbots and more of automations. And I will say it's still rough right now because there are layoffs that are happening through different companies, unfortunately. But at the broader side of things, there's also recs that are opening up as well. And so, from a software engineering organization, I think we're actually booming a lot more than what we used to be pre-COVID as well. So there's a lot more software engineering roles opening up today than what it was last year, 2, 3 years ago.
That's good to hear. Okay, so next question is, if you are applying for internships in freshman year, would you suggest applying through the official link? Or do you suggest finding an alumni and emailing them? And is that a bit too much or too early for internships?
Yeah, great question. It's very ambitious of you, so I applaud you, whoever you are, for that question. I think the best way, if you are a freshman, is to find alumni, connect with your career advisor if you need help, maybe to track that person down, that he or she, right? And then you want to then take proactive steps. Um, I don't know USC's policy when it comes to PII, which is personal identification information of giving out someone's email or phone number. But I would suggest you to connect with your career advisor and connecting with them. If you find this person on LinkedIn, even better, connect with them, send them a message, a note that you're interested, and see how they can help you be connected.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So next question is on internship experience. So how do you suggest students without internship experience to stand out for technical roles like software engineering? Sometimes students come into college with no experience, or even throughout college, they might not get as much experience as they wished. So what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, great question. When it comes to software engineering, a lot of the engineers that I've helped kind of interview and coach and give guidance to, what they did is they practiced. So you would have your what we call a dev environment, right, which is the pre-deployment of pre-production, and then you have the post-production of where the actual code lives and the changes are happening live. And so, from a software engineering standpoint, you want to understand the deployment phases. As a software engineer, if you don't have much skill set experience on your resume, and that's fine and fair. Don't be discouraged by that. You want to also understand how to deploy the code from a pre-deployment to actual live production environment, because usually software engineers, you guys will be challenged in code and case studies of how to do that and how to find and be very nitpicky of how to find bad code versus clean code. And so, nowadays you have ChatGPT that can kind of help you. Don't use ChatGPT to do your homework and research. Stay away from that because we will know, and there are ways for us to actually know. So, I hope that helps. And yeah,
Yes, please don't use ChatGPT. You can use it as a guide, but please don't use it to, copy and paste. All right, so I did give mic access to a student, so if you want to unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, Sam, thank you so much for the for sharing. And I'm just curious, like, so you said the job market is actually booming, but I'm wondering if you're referring to like software engineering roles in general, or for new grads positions or and internships as well.
yeah, great question. It is specific for software engineers that is still growing pretty steadily. When it comes to like operational excellence, for example, like program managers. There's program management. You can go from a technical program management and non-technical. Those are also actually pretty steadily growing as well. Outside of those two organizationals, I will say, unfortunately, the job market from like recruiter to be a business developer, a salesperson, those roles are kind of have been kind of turned down a lot more from a market data standpoint. But from a software engineer standpoint, it's been rapidly growing pretty steadily, fast. That doesn't mean everyone who applies will get the job, unfortunately, just because it is a uh, high turnaround market where people are applying left and right all the time. But to answer your question, it is growing pretty quickly from a software engineering standpoint.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up on that. And how do you recommend like us as students like looking for entry-level roles or internships to capture on this trend in this current market conditions?
Yeah, if you go to on LinkedIn and just search for internships, you'll actually find a whole lot of job recs there to look into. You could do that same thing on Indeed.com and on ZipRecruiter, I believe. So from there, you will see which companies you find most interested with, depending on what their needs are in terms of internship, and then be connected there. And then you want to use that SCAR methodology that I alluded earlier in the deck of reaching out to the hiring manager or the recruiters if possible, and then hopefully that will help you progress into the interview stage.
Okay, thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you for your question. So I know we're short on time. I am going to actually prioritize some of the interviewing questions because this is an
Yeah,
interview workshop. And then I'll go into all the other questions about LinkedIn and specific tech
sure.
industry. So just a few more. What would be your advice during a technical part of the interview if you're not sure what the best answer would be, or if you need some time to answer the question?
Great question. It's right off the bat, it's safe to ask for time. Never be afraid to ask for more time if you need to. Pause, breathe, tell yourself the world is not on fire, everything will be okay. The second thing is if you absolutely don't know how to answer that question, it's rather safe to be brutally honest and say you actually don't know the answer to that question rather than trying to spew up something that you're making up on the spot Also, we will also know if you are typing or looking at something. So I hope that helps.
Great. So the next interview question is, do you have any advice for technical but non-CS interviews?
Yes, my advice is to, I mean, that's a pretty broad question, but my main advice for that is to start researching into understanding what data sets are. APIs is one big example that a lot of companies use today. No matter what platform that you are on, every company uses APIs because there's different cross platforms that you're going to be utilizing for data, for um, software and deployment and so forth. So look at that. And the third piece I would also highly encourage, if you haven't thought about it already, is program management. So there's PMP certifications, there's agile certifications, methodologies. You want to look into that because within program management, you can do technical, you can work for the engineering teams, product teams, operational teams, which all require a technical background to, you don't have to code, you don't have to deploy code, you don't have to touch code, read code, but you have to understand how to talk to engineers and understand the problem that you are solving.
Thanks, Sam. We'll take one last question. We have an interesting question here about GPA and projects. So is it possible to get an internship if you have a low GPA? Would doing personal projects give a leg up in combination with connecting with recruiters?
That's a great question. You know, to be honest, nowadays, companies are not looking for really GPAs. They're looking for experience and or your OYD, your owning your domain, and how much research you have done. Obviously, if you are a new grad, you're not gonna, you may have zero experience or some internship. And technically speaking, it will be 0 years of experience because you're coming right out of college, which is fine. But usually the GPA is not factored into your hiring process. That used to be a thing, but it isn't today. So I hope that helps. And then I think I'm good to continue going for like 10 to 15 more minutes if you do, or if you want to call it, Sarah, I'm happy to do that too.
Okay, no, I'll leave it up to you. If do you want to stay for 10, 15 minutes to
Yeah,
look
we can
at questions here?
continue. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, let's do it. So we have a question, a specific question about programming background. So from a programming background, how would you prepare for a data analyst position that is more geared towards statistics / math background?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So data analyst, a couple things. I'll break it down to three parts. Your role as a data analyst is to understand trends of the data. So whether that's in Tableau, the Google Cloud, right, or different dashboards, what we like to call it. And you have to really practice and beef up your SQL scripts. That's the best way I can put it. Second piece, the forecasting, that's really more of the FP&A, the financial process team, where they will kind of work in hand with the C-level executives and do some forecasting depending on the revenue of lookbacks of Q1 to Q4. So the data analyst sometimes gets their job into the FP&A work, but not too much. So I wouldn't worry too much about what the forecasting of what the company revenue is going to be if you're going to be a data analyst role. And third piece with the data analyst role is you want to be a cross-functional team player. The reason why is because as a data analyst, you are going to work with people from the marketing side, the sales side, the engineering side. And I will guarantee you, a lot of these people in these different organizations, the marketing team will have no idea what the technical um, verbiage are saying or doing. And you're going to have to analyze that data and spit back to them of what actually has a engineering team gathered in terms of the data, and translate that to the marketing person, if that makes sense, and vice versa. So the data analyst role with mathematics, it's not too much of having like a cool, crazy synthesized code script to solve. It's really beefing up your SQL for that.
Okay, next question is, what advice do you have from switching into the industry from academia? Not everyone goes straight into the tech industry. So if they were in academia or they were in higher ed for a while and they're worried about not particularly having the same vocabulary, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, great question. The first answer is to understand what path you want to head towards to. So I alluded this earlier, but there's different orgs in companies. You have the tech org, which is engineers, product managers, program managers. You have the operational org. Usually, it's familiarized with marketing, sales, CX, CS as well. And then you have other, you have the people org team, which is the recruiters. You have the HR team, you have the generalists there as well. And then you may have, governance. Governance is security, compliance, tax folks, right? Of regulatory laws. And so my advice is to kind of research of these different orgs, free information on the internet, and then try to narrow down and pick which top three interests you the most and why. Out of that top three, I highly advise you then to talk to your significant other or your family members, then to see which one actually is a passion of yours. So you may, for example, if you are coming from the academia route, wanting and you love connecting with people, maybe at the end of the day, your heart's desire is to really understand people's background and to connect with them. So that usually is an indicator you are probably a good fit for sales or recruiting. They're kind of the same but different in avenues, but they both connect with people.
Great answer. So going back to interviews, we have some master students on this call. So for a master
Oh, great.
student finding an internship, the student is asking, if I don't have much relevant experience, what can I say during an internship interview?
That's a great question. I mean, this one I'm going to defer to speaking with your career advisor, just because the studies of um, that this person just mentioned about the master internship. So yeah, the reason why I'm deferring to the career advisor just only because they are most closely advised and tied into your path of not just success, but in terms of what you want to do and how to get there. Um, my only suggestion is to study and to also look research what others have done. There's different online forums that you can do. There's Reddit, which is a pretty popular thing that most people look up. Try to look up other Discord channels. I know there are tons out there. I don't know top of my head, but there are a lot of internship Discord channels as well from what I've seen. So highly recommend you to do your research before you just join anything.
Yeah, good point. And also, like Sam said, you can come talk to us. This might be a longer conversation because it really is a case by case situation. So please come talk to one of our advisors at the center, or you can go to your school-based center, which is Viterbi, and they can also assist you further. If anything, you can also gain experience by joining different clubs and organizations because they're offered both for undergrad and graduate students. And so try to, take on projects, gain leadership experience on campus. In addition to that, go talk to your faculty, right? They're both in the field and also in academia. So you want to tap into all of those resources, and hopefully that will help you gain some experience and leverage for you to apply for things externally too. So again, feel free to stop by if you have additional questions. Next is, let's see here. Let's go back to LinkedIn. So I know you mentioned the importance of reaching out to hiring managers, to recruiters, and different people in the industry to break into tech and as you're trying to figure out what you want to do. So this student is asking, what are the next steps? So let's say you reached out. Do I ask for a coffee chat? Do we meet virtually, in person? How long should the coffee chat be? I think we can go over some best practices for informational interviewing.
Yeah, great question. So once you reached out to that recruiter or hiring manager, this is after you've applied to the role. So there are ways where several instances you could wait to the hiring manager or recruiter to get back to you. But again, you have to remember each time you are allowing to not to apply to that role, someone else is going to grab your seat. So you want to be as aggressive as possible by applying first and foremost, and then reaching out to the hiring manager or recruiter if possible. If you are getting no answers, please don't harass them. They're probably really busy, probably getting other messages. My best advice is that you can send another quick note through LinkedIn just to see if they've received your message and if they'll like to chat. If you still don't get a response, it's not the end of the world. Please don't be discouraged. That happens to everyone, so it's not just you. And lastly, I will say again, try to have that mindset of being confident. And just because you may not get an answer back quickly or at all doesn't mean they don't like you. That is not the case. And so I'm pretty sure most likely they are very busy or have other priorities in place. Um, Happens to me. I get LinkedIn messages every day. So yeah.
Love it. I do want to mention that you can continue to connect with Sam even after this presentation. So I did drop the link again in the chat, so feel free to save it. I believe he's open for coffee chats too, so you don't get this this opportunity often. So do follow up and ask as many questions as you'd like. So just to be respectful of your time, Sam, I'm just going to go to maybe 3 more questions and then I'll let
Sure.
you know about your day. Let's see here. Let's stay on the topic of LinkedIn for a little bit longer. So someone is asking, let's say I reached out, but they don't respond. Then how do I get their attention?
Yeah, great question.
Or just move on to like another person, right?
Yeah, you really can't do much to quote unquote grabbing someone else's attention if they're not really responding to you other than sending more messages. But the thing is, you don't want to look very desperate. You want to you want to come off as someone who is confident in themselves, but also that you are eager to learn and grow about the role. Just because someone does want to connect with you doesn't mean you'll get the job as well. So, the best way is again, you don't want to harass people 24/7. I would just say the max is sending them just one more follow-up if they're not responding. And if they don't respond, I would just then continue to move on because again, uh, time is your greatest enemy here. If you are wasting your time to overthink about different scenarios of why they're not responding to you, which happens, don't get discouraged and don't let time pass you uh, and discourage you to apply to other jobs. You want to keep going and keep that momentum going for applying those jobs. So yeah.
Okay. So there is one lengthy question here. So a student is asking, you mentioned to not come up with a solution on the fly and be honest about not knowing how to solve a problem. However, for problems you have not seen before, would it not make sense to reason through the problem and figure out the solution while you explain your thought process?
So great question. So what I have been coached from various FANG companies, and what I've coached other people is, that's a great question, is to pause and ask a clarifying question. So real quickly, as example, if I get asked a question, whether that's behavioral, technical, or my thought process, I'll pause and say, um, I'm sorry, can I ask a clarifying question? Usually that interviewer will say, of course. So from there, you'll want to kind of, I'm not going to use the word twist, but you'll want to somehow maneuver that question in a different way. So one example will be, hey Sam, can you tell me a time where you had a negative experience with a coworker? Sounds pretty standard, and you could answer it that way. And I will pause. Okay, can I ask a clarifying question? Sure. Are you asking for a negative experience with a coworker who is another peer that was on my team or that wasn't on my team? And second, are you asking for an example of what happened and how I mitigated that issue? Now you give that back to the interviewer. Now things are spinning in that person's head and saying, I actually like your question more. So you answer it. So that gives you the power to have the answer. So um, I hope that helps. And usually, oftentimes, is you're not going to always get the exact question ahead of time, because by law, recruiters can't do that, unfortunately. But you can almost get a feel, and usually good recruiters will do that for you. But again, you want to digest what they're actually trying to ask you at the end of the day. Because if I just said, okay, yeah, I had a negative experience with this peer, that actually may hurt my interview score a lot more, rather than offering to suggest, can I ask that clarifying question of, are you asking what was the outcome of that and how I prevented that from happening next time, right? Then it gets the ball rolling. So I hope that helps.
That was super helpful. All right, well, that concludes our technical interviewing workshop, because I do want to
Awesome.
respect Sam's time. And again, like I mentioned before, you can always include more questions in the Google form. Sam, I just wanted to thank you for all the
Of
information
course.
and advice, and especially grateful for taking the time to answer every single one of the students' questions and just inspiring them to
Of
pursue
course.
the tech field.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Sarah. And hope to see you guys someday over at USC if we ever do this live.
Yeah, you're welcome to come on campus, and we hope that you'll join us next semester. And thank you everyone
Cool.
for staying on call for so long.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Right
Bye.
on.